Hello, yes, sadly, I have worked out that having my microphone on my glasses picks up the audio better and I'm less likely to rustle it as I'm moving around. So you're going to have to put up with me looking like I am from Wing Commander. Anyway, we are looking today at a MagnaCut kitchen knife, and it is chisel ground. It is a Gary Creeley Omnivore, a very fine kitchen knife indeed. But right now it is rather dull. Behold. Terrible. How embarrassing. So I need to resharpen it, but I had doing this because I had a question about how am I going to resharpen this knife from someone who's just bought this. So I'm going to show you how I resharpen this knife. So the face of the blade has a grind on it, and I guess the other side of the blade does not. The other side of the blade is just a flat piece of steel there. The reason kitchen knives do this, and this is why some kitchen knives will be sold as left or right-handed, is that the grind, when there is sort of a staggering there, it will push material away from the knife. Sometimes full flat ground kitchen knives can, if you cut through something like cheese, have a bit of friction or resistance. There's no kind of air gap anywhere, so the material can sort of get stuck and the knife can go down a bit slower through like a more tacky sort of substance, right? So some knives like this, great for cutting things like salami, cheese. It'll push the stuff away a little bit easier. There's a minor difference that people who use chef's knives all day would probably notice quite apparently. So how do you sharpen a chisel ground knife? Well, it depends really on what the edge apex is like. So this one here, generally I would say was largely a chisel ground edge apex as well when I first got it. However, as I've gone on sharpening it, my sort of opposite strokes, my neatening strokes, my truing strokes with my cutting media or my stones have gradually put, probably you can see is a little shiny line there. It's kind of the back of a V bevel. So basically it's slowly Ving itself up there. You could set this down and reset it almost entirely by aggressively putting an angle here, like aggressively sharpening one side and then going back to maybe just stropping on the other side. But I've always sort of taken to using at least a high grit stone or a ceramic or something and then a strop, and that has done this. And it does not affect the knife, in my opinion, at all. And I actually kind of prefer somewhat Ving of the edge. So just commentary there. I've decided today I'm going to be very traditional kitchen and sharpen this on some water stones or some Japanese whetstones. I'm going to bust out my Sharpens, I think. Have I sharpened MagnaCut on those Sharpens? I don't know. So we're going to see. I'm even going to go straight from the beginning. I'm going to go from a rough stone rather than, often I'll start with a diamond just to make it easy to save myself some time. But I think a screw it. We'll go all the way. We'll Sharpen from 320 all the way through to 5,000 or whatever. Should be fun. I will stop and comment every time if I see something happening that I need to point out. But otherwise, I'll just try and show the camera and include it all as best as I can to show you what I'm doing and making it as obvious as possible how I'm doing things. So yeah, it shouldn't be a too difficult knife to sharpen. It's got a very, very light belly. It's not hooking around as much as some others. It's a shortish knife, so you're not going to be managing too much of the stone and distributing the blade too much, worrying about that as you can with a larger knife. So it should be a pretty fun sharpen. Only obstacle is, of course, MagnaCut is a pretty advanced steel, so it can be a little bit more difficult to sharpen than, say, your typical VG10 kitchen knife. So anyway, let's get into it. Alrighty, so what I've got here is all my stones, and they're in the order that I'm going to use them, just coarsest through to finest. This is a bit excessive. You don't need to go as crazy. You could probably take out half of these, but you know what? I'm going to make it nice fine edge. Got some water. You need to periodically splash your stones to keep a slurry going, which keeps the surface of the stone moving. So, keeps your metal particles going and all that sort of thing, makes the sharpening better. And then I've got a rubber stone holder for the stones that don't have the stands. So the stones in here sit on top of the stand, and that's fine. And then I've got a leather strop, which has Creeley's compound in it. I've gone and put the fine one on this side and the thicker one, the coarser one on this side here, just the fluffy leather and the smoother leather. So that's for finishing. And then, overall, all you need then is your knife, and you're going to do some sharpening. I'll go through it, I suppose, as I do it. Alright, so I recommend putting a towel down. It'll help once things start getting a bit wet. In fact, it's sometimes better for the towel to get wet straight away. It'll help things to just sit in place and stops the mess a little bit. So get some water on top of your stone there. And remember, this side I'm going to do minimal interactions with. So I'll be mainly cutting towards me with the knife here. So you get a handle on how much you need to. This stone here is quite thirsty because it's the the less fine, the more water they suck in, and the shorter the lifespan of the stone generally is. That's why they're cheaper. The coarser stones are generally cheaper than the finer ones. So put some water on there, let it soak in, let it sit there for a second. And then what we're doing is, I mean, what I could do, I suppose I could color in the edge just to make sure I'm actually removing it. And this is a good step to start with if you are new to this. So just put a line of Sharpie on the edge of your knife, and then that way your first couple of polishes, you'll see you're actually removing it. And then really you pull towards yourself. Trickiest part about freehand sharpening is learning sort of how to control the blade. So keeping it still, like keeping everything locked in, and when to lift your elbow. So you need to lift your elbow on every knife that has a belly. So some knives, you're lucky, they've just got flat edges. If I got one around here at the moment, not really. Okay, so say this Leatherman here, right? Pretending this front isn't a tip, we're not going to sharpen the tip. With flat edges, you can literally just push back and forward. All you need to worry about is keeping like your hand here steady. So you can do that by either locking your wrist or locking your elbow, or however it works for you. So back and forward is all you need to do, right? But any knife that has a belly on it, which is most of them, you're going to have to work out when to lift your elbow, because that will keep the tip from getting missed out. And you're sort of doing it in a controlled motion over the stone. And that roughly will have the even edge going along, as long as you're keeping everything level on this plane of operation. It's a practiced skill. It's something that you need to pick up gradually over time. You'll eventually get a sense, and you'll eventually get the muscle memory for it. So it's one of those things that really feels hopeless at first. I felt hopeless doing this for ages, and I actually started learning on the workshop systems that have the guides on them, and I pretty soon graduated past the need for those. But yeah, the hardest part I think for me was learning when to lift my elbow up and sort of when to spread the knife. I'm cutting kind of diagonally across the stone and lifting my elbow up to accommodate that belly, whilst I'm sort of keeping the spine with about a finger's width worth of space between it and the stone at all times. Even when the knife is here on the belly, it's one of those things you just need to practice and learn. And you can watch all the tips and tricks video in the world and all the tips about making it easy in the world, but you just got to do it and get better at it by doing it. So just checking here. Yes, I'm definitely wiping off my Sharpie. Looking good. Yep. All the way to the tip. Yes. So that's good. And I can see all the little bits of edge that are sort of falling away and a little bit rough. So that means I'm catching up to the edge apex, and it's going to kind of burr past and sink down past all the little tiny microchips that are, making it not cut very well. This thirsty stone needs more water already. Anyway, I'll try not to talk, because then it makes the sharpening longer, and then I can't fast forward as much for it, because this is a full sharpening that I'm doing. So I can feel already a burr on this side of the knife. Might even be able to really grabbing into that leather when I touch it. So that's good. It means I'm removing steel pretty rapidly, and it means I'm going to do it for a little bit longer than it might feel like, because I want to make sure I get past all the chips and damage that would be on that edge. That part there I could just notice, very specific part of the knife, was more damaged than the rest of it. So I'm just kind of catching that part up with it. And I think I got most of those little, you can see them as like little black, when you hold them up against the light, little black notches along the edge that are where there's obviously a bit of a chip or something going on. But also at a certain point, the burr starts to hang out a bit, and so it all kind of blurs into one a little bit. So at a certain point, you do just stop and move on to the next stone, and trust that the cutting of the first couple of stones is going to do most of the removal that you need. Careful with your tips. Trick for new players and for old players who get lazy and start going too fast. But I've got a nice burr going there. I'm just going to... a couple of corrective passes, I think, might need for that tip that I just run off the edge. So this chisel ground knife, I'm going to go through entirely just doing this one side, and then the last thing I'll do is go quickly up through a couple of these grits on the opposite side just to knock off burrs, and that's how I'm going to leave it, right? So really are focusing a lot of your effort on this existing edge apex here, the one that's underneath the main grind, and yeah, we're going to move on from there. Cool, moving up the stone. So we're going to grab this 500 grit Rockstar stone. A bit dirty here it is, but it's okay. Stone holder is a very, very wise investment. Probably could have cleaned it a bit better last time I used it. Jeez, Pete, you suck. That is going to need a... when your stone sucks like this, best thing to do is get a bit of sandpaper. And that's just from me being obviously hasty and not being bothered to clean my stone off properly last time. But that's got that real crusty layer of like congealed old stone and steel off of it. And just a little bit more water. There we are. Cool, so this 500 grit stone is effectively going to be doing what that one did, but a little bit slower, so making for a finer edge. Just every now and then, wipe your edge off, and into it. It really does appear like I've got most of those little chips and crap out of the edge. I'm going to go a little bit longer for this in case there's ones I can't see, and then I'll be moving on to some what you'd start to call polishing stones, or maybe not finishing stones, but yeah, definitely starting the polishing and refining process with the 1000 grit. Cool, let's move up to the 1000. This one's a bit dirty, but it's not rough. Doesn't have bumps and knocks on it like the last one did. I've put it away too hastily, I think. Got there. Maybe it does need a slight polish. No, that'll be fine. That'll come out. So this 1000 stone definitely still cuts. Some people use this as their starter stone for a lot of their steels. I just find that I'm still not quite good enough to not take the easy option out of having like a diamond or a really rough abrasive setting my edge apex. Looking pretty good, it's getting a slight polish on it, looking nice. A little bit rusty, I keep running off the side of it. Something that you eventually figure out not to do again, but it's probably been about a month since I've freehand sharpened a knife. I've been all caught up on my fun new work sharp systems and KMEs and things. Pretty nice looking. Rightio, moving on. Sharpen Glass 2000. Another dirty boy. Smooth though, just crud. It'll wash off. This is when the stones start to really step up and feel glassy smooth. This one's still got a bit of feedback. I always talk about the next one, really doesn't give you much back at all. This one you can still feel a bit of cutting going on. You can feel the edge trailing along it a little bit better than some others. I find the next one's a bit, a little bit obstinate. Doesn't give me too much, but spend as little time on it as I can. All looking pretty polished, pretty sharp, pretty nice. Moving on to this lady here. So smooth. Feels harder and smoother than the 8000, which I moved to next. But I know it's not, but it's just kind of how it feels. A lot of people have the same sentiment about it. Today, not feeling so bad, but definitely the glassiest so far, which would make sense, being that the grid is twice as dense now as the last at least. See, the darkness accumulating on the surface still means it's cutting. Check my camera's still on. Yep. My microphone. That'd be embarrassing. I was talking to no one. Sound doesn't work if the microphone isn't doing. The phone's got a little doodad in the back of it, which means it's only listening to this microphone. So if the microphone goes dull, then there is no sound. That'll do. Little time on that one as I can. I don't like ya. I don't like ya. As essential as it probably is for like a very nice high polish finish. So 8000 Sharpen glass. Last one. That just feels nicer. Even though it's finer, feels nicer. Maybe it's not as hard. I don't know. Whatever it is. And this is all gibberish to me when I started, but there is something to it. You can feel the difference between these stones once you start using them a lot. What you can do is do little back and forward strokes as long as you move the blade. There's different ways you can do it. So you can just, as long as you can lock your wrist at all points and lock the edge at all points, you can certainly kind of more roughly back and forth your knife. But I think the lengthy strokes like this are probably the best thing to get your head around, and it's kind of where I'm still at. Cool. Pretty shiny. Massive burr on the back. So what are we going to do about that? We're going to get this 1000 stone again. I'm going to knock it off. Knock it off. 1000 is coarse enough to cut a burr off, but sort of not coarse enough to start, aggressively sharpening, away. So which is not what I want to do. Hear that? Really low strokes as well, just to make sure. And that is very, very sharp. I can already feel it. The burr is gone, and after a strop, this thing is going to be crazy sharp. So got Creeley's compound. I'm not going to reapply it. It's already on there. It's good stuff though. Let's now. Some people say you can overstrop. You probably can. I just kind of go the weight of my hand and the knife rather than really digging in there. Someone said they hate how I strop the other day. I'm like, sorry, I don't know how I'm doing it. I don't know how I can change to make you like it more. So as you can see, in this whole sharpening experience, I've spent maybe 5% of the time on that non-apexed edge. Just moving over to the side. When you've got a really properly nice kitchen knife like this, I would recommend sharpening on the slower stones than on diamonds, because overall diamonds are great, but if it's a high use knife, you will end up chewing through the lifespan of it just a little bit. It's not crazy, but these stones are definitely gentler on a knife, and it will remove stuff slower. Righto. Moment of truth. I am pretty excited about how this is going to cut. Let's just start from the top. Right. It's just, it all points to that edge. There is no hiccups. Sort of really drag the whole thing along. Really feel for it. Shut your eyes. Maybe at the tip I could have gone. I was chicken out of the tip just a little bit, but very, very sharp. Very, very nice. Resharpened. Clearly chisel ground omnivore knife.